Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we are going to be updating the R.S.V Atoll. We're going to be taking some ideas and suggestions from other users and throwing them in together here. So first things first, the R.S.V Atoll, as many of you must know, it is the first fishing boat that I released the day of the fishing update release. Since then, I've slowly been adding to it, adding my own elements. I've changed multiple times now the fishing system. Right now we have a pretty large sized net, not a bad system overall, but I do have an idea on how to make it even better. As I mentioned in my other video, the one talking about innovations, users sometimes give me suggestions and ideas. In this case, user Fox here gave me a modified version of the Atoll. Well, actually, Fox was asking to upload it. However, the changes that they made to my creation did not qualify as something that I'd allow uploaded. We have quite stringent rules when it comes to this type of thing, just for the reason of these creations take me so much time, and I don't really want to just give people re-uploading permissions quite easily. There's definitely things that I do want or do allow uploaded, but when it's altered, if it's a long creation, longer than 15 meters, I don't allow, just because 15 meters is sort of the cutoff. If it's small enough, then it didn't take that much time, but if it's 15 meters or longer, or if it's just a creation that not a lot was changed, I don't necessarily want to allow that type of thing. I hope you all understand that. It just comes down to the time and effort that I take versus the time and effort someone else takes to make such a small change. But that said, what was really awesome is that Fox actually gave me their XML file. So we're going to be going through the XML file and understanding exactly what Fox did, and I may take some of these ideas and throw them into my creation. But before I begin that, I'll just take a look here at the notes. So, fixed a bug with the fish counter, added a new winch and crane setup, net is controlled through the winches, no dangling net, added a catch camera. This is super cool. I really think this is a great idea. This catch camera, you can actually observe what you have in the net. Now, again, keep in mind, this is a research vessel, so you're trying to research, not just catch fish. So that's kind of the idea that I go into this with that mindset. So that catch camera is fantastic. So they uploaded or created one of the fake monitors into the catch camera. Then external changes, different chimney, different front window design, and the hopper was made to look like a freezer, which actually helps if you release the catch while traveling at great speeds. It bounces off the freezer and falls into there. I love that freezer. That's something I'll definitely be doing. And here you could say the different crane and a bigger net, automatically nets the spool net when it's spawned. So a couple of these things you could see here from these snapshots that were provided. The interior is somewhat changed. There's some updates done. I don't necessarily say I'm going to upload or create all of them. I'm not trying to take Fox's ideas here, but I'm giving full credit to the creation that I see here. Now, one thing that I just found absolutely genius, and this definitely ties back into my discussion of innovation, so make sure you watch the video about innovation. But I had previously said that I wish that these net anchors used a composite connector rather than 3 of these. However, today I was proven wrong for the reason that how genius is this? You have to for sure have 4 winches in this instance, so you have 4 connectors, 1, 2, 3, 4, attached to 4 winches, 1, 2, 3, 4. You could just use the input. Remember, when you communicate to one of these nets retract, you can communicate to another one of these nets to release catch, and another one of these nets to extend. So, I can't believe I didn't see it. That is what prompted my discussion about all the innovations, because something like this, you just need a fresh eye to look at you and tell you you don't need an external microcontroller. You literally can just use just use those little things. So you can see here what I did with my weight and this microcontroller that communicates with the fish net and whatnot. You don't need any of that. So quite cool to see that. I love getting really kind of detailed ideas like that, because that is a game changer. If you can get something like that, you now have a net that is able to be much easier to deploy. And you can see that some of these are weighted, some of them are not weighted, all that good stuff. Now, we take a look here at the crane. Definitely a more realistic crane. My only concern with a crane like this is that it can get too top heavy. You can see here Fox is using solid rocket fuel, so each one of these is 5, and you have like 6 of them, so you have 30 weight right there. You have all this stuff, whereas mine, again, probably too simplistic and plain, and looking at it now, it does not look very nice. So while there are parts of my crane that I do like, I think overall as a crane, this one does look more realistic and substantial, so I'll see what I can do there. Then the front window, you got this kind of hood over top of the window, and then you have these windows that sort of fold down. While I do like the look of the windows with that angle there, I don't like that it's open to the elements. So you can see here, because of this, this top floor is actually considered open. So if you flip over, this is going to flood instantly rather than being kind of secluded from air or its own little thing. And then this little eyebrow or whatever you want to call it. Obviously, there are some personal touches. You see the funnel here too. That is a personal touch. It definitely looks a little more realistic and rounded and whatnot. The cooler I do love. And I love the idea of the fish camera. You can see in here, this display now has even a little like keyboard touchpad, which I find awesome. And I do love how it automatically spools the net up. That's a great idea. This freezer is a great idea. We're going to definitely take some of these ideas. Now over here, if we turn on our camera, it actually lets you sort of move it around as well as zoom in and out. So I do love this system, and you can move it around so depending on what is in your net. Now because the camera has such a substantial zoom, the more you zoom in, the faster that it'll appear to be panning, of course, because this is a good speed. That's what I want to say. That looks great. It fits right in with the science laboratory there, so that is an awesome idea. And up here in the controls for the crane, you can see that we now have sort of this system here that controls the crane. What I do have to say is I'd like to maybe clean it up a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of buttons. You can see here we have top and bottom winch, which actually might make logical sense in the grand scheme of things, because when you extend the top and bottom winch, for example, down, you're creating a bigger net. Whereas the top winch down now, you can see it's moving. So it does give you a little bit more ability and kind of control. Here you have the net expanding. So that way you can actually make sure that net is fully upright. So I do kind of like that, actually. We'll see how we can implement it here. One last special request was from my Discord server admin, Sheppy. Sheppy said, I want to see if you could put a aquarium on this boat. We're a little pressed for space, Sheppy, but I'll see what I can do. So first things first, with my own version of the vessel, now you can see without that large cooler style lid, in here, right now I have each one of the hoppers communicating with the fill level. However, I noted now, or I learned, that that is not what we want. We want only one of them, because even this one will tell the total number. You don't have to add everything up. I thought I had to add up this one, add up this one. No, they share. So if we put 22% of coal at how much is in here, 49, I disconnected the addition, so it should read 49 here. So it's not doubled. So that's the first step. Very easy to do. That was just a pure bug. Next, what I want to do is move the nets away. I'm going to find a way to revamp them, sort of similar to what Fox had done. And even still, I think what I can do is make a much better system. Now, trial and error, doing things the day of the release, you know, there's obviously constraints, and that's not an excuse, that's just logic, right? When Henry Ford made the Ford auto car back in the early 1900s, if he had the Bluetooth technology and all the stuff that we have in our modern day cars, I can bet you that the cars would not look the way they did. So that's all out of the way. I will deal with the crane aesthetically in a bit, but first things first, I really do like the way this fridge looked. Now, one thing that I didn't like, all this here, we don't know how it's going to affect the weight, because you can see here now I'm adding a decent amount of weight that was not previously there. There's 15 on each corner here. Each one of these door frames are 5. So a lot more weight has been added. We'll see exactly the repercussions of this, but for now, I think that looks great. As for the smokestack, I do like my very angular design. It may not be suited for everyone, and I definitely think Fox's was more realistic, but I do think that mine just has a very simple kind of elegance, I suppose. What I may toy around, and this is just personal preference at this point, is how would it look if we had kind of a pinch zone that then expanded something like this. That might also be interesting. I don't know, I don't like it out here though. Anyway, personal preference type thing, not too that I do understand people having their own personal preference. I just like the boxy, very angular design. Again, I said my problem with the front windows, especially with these pivots, would be that it would be out to the open. And I do like the bridge. I don't need the little like eyebrow over it. This matches my other designs. Now the crane, I definitely think some work can be done. If anything, this these pipes don't look super great here. It would be almost better. Like the other one for sure did look better. The other crane, more realistic, more modern, all that good stuff. But how I can make it my own is to be determined. Now, I tend to use orange for my cranes because that's in my industry. They always have them kind of showing up a little bit different. Like cranes are always shown as some sort of highlight, like, you know, color that brings people's attention. And I tend to continue that in my building. But you could see the location of this here doesn't have to remain, because we're never needing to have the net this close to the ship. I can always push it out a little bit. So I might try to do that and see if I can create a little bit more of a nicer design when it comes to the crane. While not as intricate, I definitely like the look of this brace. Very structural. I'm a structural engineer after all. I also added these 2 indicators. When it's on, those indicators will be on. I didn't go quite with a huge upper piece just so I can keep the weight down, but I do like the overall look and shape of this. Now for the top, think a very simple thing like what was on the original, or what was on Fox's design, did look good and did suit it well. It just looks a little bit thicker and bigger. So I'll kind of just add that and go from there. Now the net is probably the biggest and most important retrofit because everything else was more or less aesthetic. So I will start by dragging out this portion of the net to make it start off with a larger design, and I'll do the same for this one there. In this case, the net starts off almost square, which is going to be more beneficial to our boat. Now here is the weight, or the thing I was using for the weight. It is the most dense object. We're just going to go ahead and remove all this other stuff because I want to start using that same idea that was given in Fox's creation. So Fox had used the winch inputs as the control system to this and did not require having this microcontroller on the net and all that other stuff. So once I could figure out how to spell weight, I can throw these on there and there. So now we have what we call our bottom ones and our top ones. Now, is this logical? I also noticed that one thing that was quite interesting that was done by Fox is this one was the one with the weights to drop. So does that make logical sense? Does it really matter? Technically, as long as two of them are weighted and two are not weighted, they should fall and drop either way. So that really shouldn't change much. One thing that I will have to do, however, now is connect these input outputs to the actual winches themselves. Before even starting with the microcontrollers, I expanded the size of the net. We're going to see if this size works. You can tell it's a pretty big area. And inside the control cabin here, I pushed the seat back, kind of back to this one, freed up some space down here for controls, and not just that, up here increased the height of the roof or the ceiling in this little area so we can actually have some more displays, dials, whatever else is needed, prevent them from going on this side, and kind of keep it clean right in front of us. First, to make a microcontroller that will communicate with the front and rear winches on the net, as well as have a timer that makes the whole thing get brought up, sort of sucked in to the winches. That's this here. So you have a timer for 10 seconds upon spawning. Now if I spawn it up, you can see here the winches are all being brought in, and it gives it a decent time to have the net sort of sitting quite happily here over the deck. The other details here on the deck, like we said, here includes the freezer. Got the seal on the freezer, and up in here we could see how the little cabin looks with these changes. So I added a bigger display, and I've added these buttons here as well as the extend net. Now none of these work. Finally, on to the actual net mechanisms and using the winches to control the net. I added some more buttons here, and I wanted the top and the bottom of the net length, or the winch length. Here we see it in live action, so the net is pulling itself in and the winches are pulling themselves in until it is that size. So now it is a much sleeker size. You can see in the case of the vessel, it's quite condensed, shouldn't be dangling around, hitting into things, and just looks overall much cleaner. Next, I do love that fish camera idea where we can actually determine which species of fish we have in our net, whether we want to release them or bring them in, all that good stuff. That is fantastic thinking for a fishing style vessel, and I definitely want to implement it here. So what I'm going to do is put that camera right here at the bottom of the vessel. I do want it to be underwater at all times, and this way we can actually position it and aim at what we need to without having to have like the water kind of lapping up over it. The location of the display being here, this is the perfect no-brainer spot for this display, especially considering this seat this display has a seat, so I can put the 2x3 display right here just like that, and we will adjust the keyboard. But here it is. This is now fixed. I can save this setup and run it on the ship. I'm quite curious to see if it will properly work and how fast it'll be and all that stuff. So infrared works. Zoom in. Alright, now that is a little bit too slow, I'd say, but let's try up, left. Okay, these are inverted. Down works, and this. So definitely too slow, and left and right are inverted, and that is because I just arbitrarily selected where these two go. But let's speed things up here so I can remove one of these. And in the case of the camera zoom as well, I'll just go ahead and put this as well. Now it's going to take some trial and error here, but overall what I'm trying to do here is get the system to work properly. One thing I've discovered is that I want to not have it zoom out all the way. I think starting off with a zoom of 0 does not help us at all. I actually want to make this 0.3, let's say, and I want to make the minimum 0 because I really don't need to go any more zoomed out. I don't need to go fisheye on this one. And in here, since we have one more available slot, I actually do want to add another output and make it a spotlight. And that spotlight will be just functioning on here with channel 9. So I could put here channel 9. And the idea is that channel 9, light, spotlight. The idea is that I can control the spotlight from this little bench here. It'll be channel 9. So if I go down to next to infrared here, we'll put a button. We'll call this channel 9 and say spotlights. It'll be a toggle. All good stuff. In here now, I have the spotlight function, and over here, I should probably put some spotlights. Now, it may be way too bright for the camera, like that may be create too much bloom on that camera, so I may be smarter to put it elsewhere, even like somewhere there. But let's give this a shot for the sake of attaching it to the microcontroller and seeing if I can move the spotlight left and right alongside the camera. Now I'm where it's inverted, so that does not help me necessarily in this case, but I could see what I can do. One can turn on the spotlight, and I gave it this blue tint or blue hue, and you could see that it's now following whatever we look at with the camera. And if I zoom in, we can go right into that hue. Blue should create a nice tone for the fish. I mean, I could go yellow or something like that as well, but I think this is quite appropriate for what we're trying to do with the fish camera. So there you have it. This system works. Of course, you could turn on infrared, but I wouldn't recommend using it with the spotlight. You're probably better off using it just like this. But you can see it does illuminate a good deal, especially if things that are in the shade or if you're doing it in the dark. So there you have it. Turning off this also resets the view. Now with a little bit of pizzazz, you can see the branded fish view here. So it does look a bit more like we're actually recording fish and getting some intel on the species and things around us. So that appears to be everything that Fox had recommended to some extent. Loved the suggestions, and I think this will be a much better and more useful fishing boat now that we have these different additions. And of course the display that brings it into perspective that it is in fact a survey boat. The last thing is that aquarium for live fish. We don't have a lot of deck space, but looking at what we do have, I think something can be done. An obvious place to begin for the tank is this corner. So I can remove this sort of equipment locker, and what I'll do is put one in the ground over here, giving us actually more storage, more space, and freeing up this corner for what can be our live fish tank. A little bit of work around in this area. I moved the fuel and electrical over to this side, so it gives us a little bit more space here for what I want to be this aquarium. After tearing apart this area that was not meant for a fish tank, I'm just stuck with the radiators here. Nothing much I could do about that, so we're just going to have kind of this corner piece. Over here, after a bunch of moving pipes and things around, it seems that I finally have the space needed to add the door frames. So the door frames are now going to fit inside this area here that you see in white, and we'll add an interface to what is needed for closing off and having the so-called fish tank or aquarium or whatever you want to call it in this region. So adding just these edge pieces here is all that's needed to seal off the area, and technically now this area is considered sealed, and that is in essence a working fish tank. As soon as we add the fluid spawner right here, actually it's called a spawner, then I can put seawater like this, and fish will be able to go in there. If I spawn that in, you'll see it's now full of water. We can jump into it, we could swim, and presumably fish can also be placed in there. And here we have it, the finalized version of the Atoll. I'm actually so happy with this. I'd even love to submit it as its own standalone creation, but it's just a small revision. Here we now have it, the fish tank. So it starts off with no water in it. The reason for that is so it doesn't weigh down the boat, but you could quite easily fill it. It is using small pumps, so it does take a little bit to fill. You could see it's 1800 liters. It's going, it's 120 now, so it'll take a few minutes to fill. Not a big deal. This isn't an urgent task. You could fill it as you are driving. In addition to that, we've cleaned up the fish finder here, and I've actually placed an upgraded system on the crane. So now when you turn on the display, you actually have the net view. So that's the same view from downstairs. So if you do have a friend who zooms it in or whatnot, that one up there will also be zoomed in. But the idea is that it's going to show you the net. And last but not least, we have our actual fish finder. So if we start up the vessel, give it some throttle, and set the crane off to start collecting the fish, so you could extend and extend everything now, push it all out, and it will grow. It'll grow, and it'll grow quite big and nice. You can see the top winches there can probably be stopped. So when we stop the top winches and look here at the net view, we can ensure that the bottom of the net also properly extends itself. In this case it's huge, so we could probably stop that now. Also with this view you can see that it doesn't really help us, so zooming it out will get us a better feeling of the shape and size of it. Now as I turn the throttle up, you can see that it is big. It is very big actually, possibly too big for our current position and size and speed, but you could always retract it as needed. So this view gives you a good idea of what exactly it is you're looking at and how it is working with conjunction of the position of the boat. So that seems to be working quite well. As you can see, we've already caught 2 fish now, and that is awesome. So huge net, huge upgrade on the previous system. And I'm happy to report that I used some awesome advice from a couple of different users, a couple of different places, and ended up with something now that is making me very happy indeed. So even like this, you could see maybe the top winches we should actually extend a little bit more out. So I'll let you play with that and get it to the proper sort of size you want. Again, down here with the camera, it'll give you the best idea of what exactly it is you're looking at. So you can see in this case, the net seems to be more or less open. And here you have it. So it's catching the fish. Now down here, just jumping back and forth a little bit, this is where now we can use our fish view to see what type of fish we have in the net. So you can see there, as we zoom in to the fish, there we get a good little view of it and all that kind of good stuff. So this allows us to get an idea of what is going on down there. Now if we do bring the boat to a stop and start to retract all these nets, we'll see if the system works, especially if the aquarium works. Now I did let it fill up, so here it is. Now stopping that, we should kind of get equilibrium. And there is our fish net. Bringing the crane over top of the deck here, you can see the fish are now dangling right above the deck. And if I go to the net view, or the crane view rather, I can even position these fish more or less above that aquarium, not quite, but better over the deck. So in this case, I can hit release catch, and I can make my way down here and start to pick up the fish and put them into the aquarium if I want. See, they're kind of jumping around a little bit. So I can dive into there, pick things up and throw them in. Not a ramp would be easier to drop this into, but in any case, this also did sort of work. I don't want to put a huge ramp because I want to, but maybe I will. Maybe I will, because you can see that it doesn't drop down on that sloped area. So you have to almost jump in to do this properly, which is not ideal. Alternatively, I wonder if we could drop it in from the top deck. I guess if this wasn't here, you probably could. Now, the fish in the aquariums do give the boat phantom physics, so I do recommend studying one fish at a time, and the rest of the fish can go into the hopper. But you could see in this case, and we can turn on the fish tank light, even the fish tank spotlight, and study what on earth we have in there. So we got these two, and we got a snook, so we got a couple of different types of fish. Again, we could choose to put them inside the hopper, or we could put them in here, or release them into the earth, or into the ocean. So there you have it. We have now succeeded in adding a couple of different suggestions, as well as some more research style elements on this vessel. I do love how it turned out. Again, like I said, I would probably want to even release this as its own standalone, but because it also included fixing the existing fishing net, making it much better, I do think this system is good to leave. This is so cool. I love this sort of camera view thing, the viewfinder, the ability to see what we have in the net. And overall, this boat is looking awesome. I'm very happy with it. Thanks to all the suggestions. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you're going to enjoy this new version of the Atoll. Stay tuned for more creations. Stay tuned for more content. And as always, happy Stormworksing, everyone.